Well, it is October 1st, and if you garden or can, you know that that is generally the time that we need to start canning all the fall fruits like plums, apples, pears, some of the grapes. And I have a nice bowl of plums that I just picked off of our tree. This is a very small batch. I usually have a lot more than this. Our plums did not do that well this year. So I'm going to wash these, and I'm using my canning pot, but we aren't pressure canning these. This will be Waterbath canning, and we're going to do them in pints. And you're going to need the jars, the non-reusable caps that seal them shut, and the reusable rings. I'll show you a few more of the tools that you'll need, but this is really basic, and it's going to apply to most fruits. If you decide you want to can fruits in lights, we do it in light syrup, like ultra light, low sugar syrup. I don't want them in heavy sugary syrup, but you can find recipes for all different sugar syrups for your fruit. So we're going to fill this with water, and we're just going to do these in a water bath. There is a little tray in the bottom of any canning pot that they sit on. That's like it holds them up off the bottom of the pan. But if you don't have a canning pot, you don't need to buy a special pot for this. You can use any big pot that you have, and I've gone as low, low tech as putting just a folded towel in the bottom to set the jars on. So you can can fruit without a bunch of special tools. You will need the handy dandy jar lifter that I've talked about in all my canning videos, because you want to be able to pull them out of the hot water. I use this because it's a magnet, and you use it to pull these little caps out of the hot water that they will be sitting in, and I'll show you a trick about that later, which I love. And what else will you need? I am going to probably raw pack these. You can hot pack or raw pack. Hot pack is where you take the fruit, basically prep it and put it in the hot syrup and let it simmer and warm up a bit, and then pack it warm in the jars. Or you can raw pack, which is where I'm just going to wash them, cut them in half, and put them in the jars raw and pour hot syrup over them. I'm going to do that method this time because I'm lazy and I don't feel like stirring them in syrup and doing all of that. I'm lazy. So small batch plums, but you could use this for apples, pears, grapes. I actually have a grape canning video. I'll put a link to it up here. It's one of my first videos. It doesn't have any talking, but it shows you the process. So I'm going to wash these, and I'll be right back. One other tool you're going to for sure need is a canning funnel, and you can buy this as a set. These three things, although I always see, the sets I see are always more than these three things. In 32 years of canning, these are the only three things I have ever needed to officially get things canned. So the only other thing that people will include in a set of canning tools is called a bubble freer, which is, I use a butter knife. You don't need that. It's a knife, basically. Usually they're plastic, but I used to use a butter knife. And you're going to use it to, once you have the fruit and the liquid in here, you're going to use it to just release any air bubbles that are in the jar with the finished fruit. So you don't need to buy all the fancy things, just get these three items. All right, so while I am getting ready to prep the plums, we're going to start the syrup. I do an extra light syrup, and again, you can make as sweet or not as sweet syrup as you prefer. I prefer extra light. We just snack on these and we don't want a lot of extra sugar. This is 5.5 cups of water and 1.25 cups of organic sugar. And I'm just gonna get that warming up, and I'll probably stand here and stir it until it dissolves. And we're just gonna cook this and stir it over medium-high to high heat until the syrup is at a boil and the sugar has dissolved. And then I'm gonna turn it down to just, ultra low, and just leave it on the stove warm while we continue the rest of the prep. So I have just rinsed all of these plums. And you want to make sure you obviously pull out any of the little stems. And I'm going to just put those in a little garbagey deal there. Paring knife, this is how I've always done these. And I just cut, do it like your mom used to do it. Cut them in half. And I just cut a little circle, like, cut them in half. Save that half, and then you have to pry the pit out a little bit, but you're going to pull the pit and just toss it. And then you have 2 nice halves, and that is what I'm going to put right in the jars. So I'm going to stand here and do all of these. I've got my syrup warmed up and sitting ready to go, and the boiling water pot I'm left-handed, so I always want to go I need to move my bowls to make this more efficient, but put these halves here, pits go there, and then I will show you how to get them in jars and put the syrup on them, and that is all there is to canning fruit. All right, I have got some of this done, and I switched to a serrated knife because it feels like it works better. And I'm just standing here thinking of things to tell you. Because they're plums, fruit is not all perfect. You're going to find some that are blemished, or like this one's all squashy and yucky. If you have chickens or pigs, I'm just putting those aside in a container, and I'm going to take them out to the animals later, or you can throw them in the compost, but that way you're not wasting anything. I mean, this one's got little brown, like I probably won't even use that. That's going to go to the pigs. So it all just gets used one way or another. So now it's time to show you my little trick. I don't know that you even need to do this anymore. I've been canning for so long, it's just an old habit. But I always put these caps in warm water, not hot, but warm, while I'm kind of getting everything ready, because I want that sealing compound to be just a little bit soft. But I think with the new canning lids, you don't have to do that, which means you probably don't need this magnet. But here's the trick that I use to not burn the out of my hand when it's in hot water and you're trying to get these out. If you magnet a couple of these, they're stacked. See how they're stacked in, like they fit together. If you try to magnet those out of the water like that, you get two on the magnet. And when if you have water in there, you're gonna have a little seal that's like a water seal that kind of vacuum seals them closed. And when you try to get them apart, a little burst of hot water will run down your hand and make you regret choices in life. So what I do instead of that happening to me, I alternate them in the water. So I'll put one in face down, face up, alternate. So put the compound up, compound down. You see, they're even hard to get apart when they're dry. So it's even harder when they're wet. That one going up, that one facing down, and so on. So those go in the water alternated like that. And then when you go to pick them up, you're just getting one. Ta-da, voila. My little handy dandy trick. So those are going in the water. And I always have one lid and jar assembly, kind of more than I guessed. I'm guessing 8. We'll see if I'm right. So we have the plums have all been cut in half, and this is going to be raw pack, so it might be a little bit easier. This is the lazy way, but it works. You can do it hot pack. That just means you're going to put these in this syrup and kind of heat them up and then put them in the jars, which I'm just skipping that step because why not? Funnel, and just start putting your halves in your jar. And sometimes I get fancy and I'll count how many halves are going in there, but in general, especially raw pack, you want to be a little forceful with getting them in, and you need to pack them in the jar a little tighter than you think, because as they cook in the canning pot, they're going to shrink up, I guess, and they're going to float, and then you'll have jars that look like you have that much liquid and all the fruit is smushed up to the top of the jar. They're still good, but it just feels like a little bit of wasted space. So I take that out, but you can see just you're kind of forcing them. You don't want to smash them and like break them up, but get them all in there like that. And then we have syrup on the stove that's already been kept hot, and it's just right at boiling now. And this is how easy this is. And this, you want what is called a headspace, which is going to be the distance between the top of the jar and the top of the syrup. And since this is a wide, shallow pot, I'm having to use a ladle. So this will be a little bit slower, but you'll be surprised how little syrup, when you pack stuff in pretty tight, it's like that's 2 ladles and it's already almost full. And I may have to make more syrup, so kind of always be prepared. I don't like making more than I need, because then you're wasting it, unless you're canning a lot. And my other trick is always don't guess what a 1/2 inch is. Have a measuring tape, because no matter what you eyeball and you think it's a 1/2 inch, it never is. And in 32 years of canning, I have never managed to be able to eyeball a jar. So I just put it, so there's 1/2 inch, we need to add just a little bit more. And once you have the first one measured, and especially you don't want to have too much liquid in any of your canning jars. Too little is not good either, but too much can cause, that's a 1/2 inch. Too much can cause all kinds of problems, because too much water, you get it hot, you're processing either in a boiling bath or a pressure canner, and you're going to end up pushing up on the lid, and you're going to force liquid and food out under the lid. Let me see if I can grab a cap. You've got a cap that will go on like that, and you're going to push food out under that, and you'll get food bits and particles in between the lid and the jar, and you will ruin the seal, and then that jar won't seal up, or it won't seal as well. So you really want to make sure that you don't overfill your liquid. And this is where the bubble freer, or as I like to call it, butter knife, comes in. You have the syrup in, you have the fruit in. You're just going to go in and just, I don't know if you can see, but it's releasing some of the air pockets that are down in there. Sorry, I have to put it on the counter to do this. But you can see little air bubbles coming up as you do this. And it kind of jostles the fruit around in there and kind of resituates everything, but you've let air bubbles out by doing that. And sometimes you can actually see the air bubble. You know, you'll see a pocket where you can go, you know, go down and try and release it. So that is all you need to do to fill your jars. And then once your jar is full and you have run the bubble freer through it, just take either a clean washcloth, a little bit damp, or I just use a paper towel and go around the rim of that jar just to make sure there's no particles of anything there to interrupt that seal. Then we take our magnet, grab a cap without spilling any water on your hand, and just put that on top, set it there, and this is your reusable rings, which after these are done sealing, you can actually take these off and use them again. The thing with these, you don't want to tighten them down. Like, you're not trying to power tighten them. You just want to go to resistance and then just finger tight. So that's all you're doing. And we're going to finish filling the jars, and they're going to go in that pot. And the only thing I might run into here is that I may have not made enough syrup to do this. And I switch the syrup out to a measuring cup just to maybe do this a little bit faster. But we'll see. I don't think I'm going to have nearly enough syrup. So I may have to pause the process. You just kind of roll with whatever. But I would rather make more syrup than be dumping it out. And I feel like we may not have enough syrup. So we're going to just fill what we can. So the one batch of syrup that I made filled I have 9 jars here. Wow. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. 9. Okay, so still guessed it right though. Whatever I grabbed was right, but I did not make enough syrup. So I'm going to have to make a little bit more syrup. I'll be right back. All right, I managed to make some more syrup and get these all filled. And I used my butter knife to release any bubbles, and we're just putting on the caps and the rings. And then I'll show you how these go in the canning pot. And again, you're not tight, just tighten and just give it one twist past where you meet resistance, but not hard. You're not trying to hold the jar lid on with the power of your arm. You're just want it to stay tight, you know, tight enough to the jar to allow the vacuum sealing to seal it. All right, so we're going to take your jar lifter and we're just going to set these in this pot of water. And what you want to see when you're done is you want to have at least about 2 inches of water above these jars. So if I've guessed it right, and I like to think that I have, we should easily have 2 inches of water above these when I'm done putting them in. And then we're going to get this water up to a boil with the jars once the jars are all, all right, here's live TV for you guys. Did you hear that little pop? Zoom in. This is what happens when you reuse your jars. Carefully pull out a broken jar. And that's what happens. So you saw it here first. Something to watch for when you're putting jars in hot water and you've used them over and over. Now I have to fish the fruit out of that water. All right, so just take a slotted spoon, go down there. You're gonna wanna be careful because there is the bottom of the jar right there. So you've just lost that fruit, which is a sad but true fact. You're gonna lose some fruit. Usually they break when they hit the hot water is when you're gonna hear that pop of the jars, but sometimes it happens once they get, once they've been in there for a little bit. But if it's going to happen, usually it's like that. It's right at the beginning. And because I've been canning so long, I'm definitely reusing jars a lot. And so a broken jar, usually probably, on a busy canning year, probably a couple of jars I'll lose, but not, it's not super common, but it's definitely not unusual. All right, let's see if we can so we're down to 8 jars. I guess I was right. And even if you're heating your jars before you put them in and you're filling them with boiling syrup and all of that, it's still going into this boiling water still does sometimes cause that. to happen, which is a sad loss, but there it is. So I'm going to turn the heat up to high and we're going to get this boiling. I always kind of look and see how much water we have above the jars, and that is plenty. All right, as we wait for that to come up to a boil, we're going to wait until it goes to a solid boil, and then we're going to set a timer. I'm going to set a timer for 25 minutes because of my altitude here. So you need to check your recipes. The books will always just give you a general time frame, but if you are at a higher altitude, for every 1,000 feet, you add 5 minutes or something. So check. Make sure you check because you want to have the right processing time for water bath canning. For me, it's going to be 25 minutes for pints, and I believe 20 minutes if I was doing half pints. All right, these have gone for 25 minutes, and unfortunately, we still have the water is purple from the jar that broke. So I'm going to turn off the heat and let this just relax for 5 minutes, and then we will pull them out of the water. But look at how purple that is from the plums that got loose in there. That's kind of disappointing. But anyway, the jars in there are fine. They're just in purple water. This is where you will for sure need the jar lifter, and I try to avoid bumping or jostling the ring or the cap when I'm pulling these out. So try to just go down past the ring and grab just the jar by the neck. Look how pretty those look. So we'll have to rinse these off because they have been sitting in plum water basically because of the leakage that happened from the broken jar. We're going to just carefully take these over and set them on a clean towel. I'm going to repeat that with the rest of them. And that's all there is to canning fruit. Any of the fruits really throughout the whole summer, this is the process you're going to use to water bath can your fruit. And if you are like me and you like to know where your food comes from or what's in the jars of food that you're feeding your family, give this a try. It's not hard. It's really, really not hard, and you don't need a lot of special tools. You can go get fruit at a farmer's market and just give this a try and see what you think. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.